Welcome to all of you to this wonderful, exciting occasion, our first Northern Award ceremony for the Hall of Distinction, Social Work Hall of Distinction. We're delighted to see all of you here. My name is Ellen Dunbar. I've been chairing the committee this year. This is a special event for our committee, and as I said, it's the first one where we've focused only on this award, and we're very happy about that. Jim Carls, who's sitting out there with you, would you raise your hand, Jim, is the vice chair of the committee and one of those who helped to get this whole thing started some few years ago, and has just been a wonderful leader in our committee. I'd just like to quickly introduce the rest of the committee, and they are Francis Capel, Ben Cuellar, Suzanne Dworak-Peck, where is she there? Jim Kelly, who's been greeting you at the door, Joe Nunn, where'd you go? Right there. And then some who could not be here today, Anita Harbert, Neil Gilbert, Ruth Britton. I want to introduce a very special guest that we have here today. She is one of the founders of the Social Work Archives and of the Social Work Hall of Distinction. And last year, she was inducted into the Hall of Distinction. Dr. Frances Feldman from Southern California. Monica White was the chair of this committee last year. She was instrumental in the development of the Hall of Distinction, and she's going to talk to you for a few minutes about the Social Work Archives and the Hall of Distinction and what it is we're trying to do. Monica?
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, all of you, for being here this evening. It's a wonderful occasion. We're very excited because we have done this a couple of times in the South, and it's just such a pleasure for, actually there's quite a few of us who traveled up to be with you this evening, and it's just wonderful. California Social Welfare, actually, Archives has been around, Francis, 25 years for the Archives, 25 years, starting out as a statewide organization whose purpose is really to preserve the history of social welfare in the state. Over the years, a number of activities have gone into achieving that purpose. For example, we do oral histories, and we have well over 150 of them. We preserve documents. We actually accept papers. So if any of you know someone who has a collection that is worthy of keeping for the archives, we'd appreciate knowing about them. We want to know about agencies, about movements, about people, everything that goes into who we are today, because that's what archives are all about. And our archives are housed physically at University of Southern California, at USC, in Los Angeles, and are available to researchers, to students, to historians, to writers, to people who want to know something about a particular agency or some event that led to social movement, to policy changes, and so forth. Well, one of the activities that was recently started was this California Social Work Hall of Distinction. And I want to say, even though Ellen mentioned it, it was the vision of Jim Carls that brought this about. And he had a real passion for it. There are, of course, other ways that social workers are recognized through NASW and some other ways, but his vision was that there needs to be a permanent place for people who have contributed to social welfare, professionally in the field, academically, through policy, through program development, through many ways that, again, have made the social work profession what it is today and would carry us through to tomorrow. Well, I think many of you know that when someone comes along with a vision and the passion to go with it, it's very contagious. And he brought it to the social welfare archives. I happened to be president of that organization at the time. It just seemed like a wonderful idea, and we went with it. And we hope that before you leave this room this evening, you'll look around. We're in our 5th year of people who have been inducted, and we are just beginning. We also have a website. If you just look for Social Work, California Social Work Hall of Distinction, you will be taken right to it, and you can read about all the people, and you can also nominate people for future induction. We really want to keep this going, and it is being done 100% by volunteers, as many of these kinds of things are. And we all, the committee, the selection committee, and the board of the archives are very proud to be doing it, and it's a real privilege to induct the kind of people that we have inducted and looking forward to in the future. So both the California Social Welfare Archives and the Hall of Distinction will continue to require our passion, our commitment and dedication, but honestly, I have to make a pitch. It also takes some dollars, and I see lots of smiles. That you all know that that's what it takes. So the generosity of friends who can contribute to help us keep this going will be greatly appreciated. And there is an envelope. If you're so inclined, you can grab on the way out. Again, welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. And now let's hear about our inductees. Thank you.
Good evening. This is a very auspicious occasion. We're very, very excited about having this induction ceremony in this format, and we're hoping that we'll get maybe some feedback from each of you about ways that we can improve it. I am just so honored to be the person who could present some words about our first inductee for this evening. He's a colleague, or he was a colleague, a friend, and a mentor. His nomination for induction into the Hall of Distinction was enthusiastically prepared in collaboration with others who knew him by Alice Hines, who's sitting in the back, who was a longtime colleague of Simon Dominguez at San Jose State University, and who now, Dr. Hines, is the director of the social work program at that university. So thank you so much for bringing forth this material, pulling it together, and presenting it to our committee. I'm going to present to you some of the words that you would have an opportunity to read right here on the board. He is considered a passionate Latino community leader. And actually, in my own mind, I think of him as a much broader kind of figure. I know that Latino issues were his primary heartbeat, but that all of us were his concern. For almost 40 years, Simon Dominguez was instrumental in developing, organizing, and advocating for services and programs to better serve the Latino community in California, and he did so with passion and conviction. He grew up in Truckee, not too far from here. Where are we? San Francisco, that's right. I'm from Southern California, so I lose my perspective sometimes. Over that way, over in Truckee. He attended San Francisco State University, where he received his bachelor's degree and his MSW from my university, the University of Southern California, in Los Angeles. In 1964, he did that. His social work career began in Sacramento County, where he worked as a child welfare worker until 1967, when he was fired from that position for taking part in a workers' strike. Now, we may be hearing some other information a little later as we get to the actual acceptance of this induction document. He moved his family here to San Jose, over to San Jose, then the city with the second largest Spanish-speaking population in California, and he began working as a child protective services worker at Santa Clara County Department of Social Services. He was particularly interested in foster care and its effect on children, and he quickly recognized that there was not a single Latino foster parent in the area, and he brought attention to this fact and to other issues facing his clients. I think that what we begin to see unfolding in this dialogue, or this information rather, is the kind of leader that Simon was. There was subtleness, apparently, in his leadership style, and people that we talked to regarding this nomination all spoke to that he was constantly leading, but you didn't necessarily always know that he was leading. Simon's contributions to social work in California were many. His role as a pioneer and leader included the development of programs and services to better meet the needs of the Latino community, the advancement of education for Latino social workers, exemplified by his involvement in the creation of the School of Social Work at San Jose State University, where he served as a role model and mentor for social work students, faculty, members of the community for 33 years. The promotion of organizations to facilitate the support and networking of Latino social workers. There's a statewide organization that he had significant role in getting started. Again, often behind the scenes, but with tremendous force and effect. He also had a vision for school social work in the state of California, and that's how I came to know Simon, through the school social work that we did with the State Department of Education and the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, and within and among the schools of social work in general across the state. Early in his career, Simon recognized the need to understand mental health issues as they pertain to the Latino community. In the early 1970s, he initiated the Chicano Mental Health Committee in Santa Clara County. He remained committed and dedicated to mental health issues, serving as the chair of Santa Clara County Mental Health Advisory Board and chair of the board subcommittee to the Family, Children's, and Adolescent Mental Health in the late 1990s. In this capacity, and through his clear thinking and careful writing, he was instrumental in bringing about a unified vision for children's mental health in Santa Clara County. Simon was a historian who recognized the important role events played in shaping the profession, and during his later years, he began writing about the history of the Latino movement, particularly in California, and the influence that it had on social work education, both locally and nationally. One of his favorite quotes from Cervantes, "A man who fights for what he believes is a man who is alive." Simon, as many of us knew him, was a very private man in many ways. He loved his family, absolutely, and often when we got together, he talked about you all and your accomplishments, rarely about himself. But maybe tonight we'll hear a few words about Simon from Mrs. Dominguez, Rosemary Dominguez, who will receive this induction document.
Thank you. I can't look at that.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
don't look. Okay, just hold it.
I didn't expect to say anything, but I did want to say Simon was such a very private person that very few people really knew him and knew how he got into social work. And I'm going to tell you, he was at San Francisco State. He was pursuing a career in music education, but he had a little problem. He had epilepsy, And he had a seizure on the campus one day, and he woke up in the health center, and he was then later told that he would not be allowed to teach in California because of his epilepsy. And he was referred to a counselor on campus, and that counselor was a social worker. God bless that person, because that social worker truly influenced the rest of his life. He decided that that's what he wanted to do. And he did. He pursued the MSW, and his first job in social work was not in Sacramento County. His first one was in Reno, Nevada, and he was fired, and we won't go into the details. But it was in his trying to right a wrong, and he was fired. He was later asked to come back and refused. He stayed in Santa Clara County, the welfare department, thank goodness, because that's where I made him. But he then moved on to he felt so strongly about social work and about meeting the needs of the unserved community, and that in his purpose in helping to establish the School of Social Work at San Jose State was to serve that mission of that school originally and for several years was to serve the Spanish-speaking population, because there were no Spanish-speaking professionals. And so one of the requirements was that they be Spanish-speaking, the graduates of that school. And it had its own funding, which he sought and pursued through the state. It was later opened, and he was referred to as a Latino, working in the Latino cause, but he was trying to serve all those people of whatever nationality or language that were not being served because there was nobody there to meet that need, and he felt so strongly about it. He always considered himself nothing but a social worker. He was 33 years in academia, and he never considered himself a professor or an educator. When asked what he did or what his profession, he said, "I'm a social worker." And he was, to his core. And he would be so honored this evening, but he would also be so embarrassed because he was such a private person. And he never, accolades just about did him in. He was always in the background. And I, on behalf of Simon and my family, I thank you so much.
I'm here to talk about Richard D. Ford. Richard D. Ford received his MSW from the State University of New York at Buffalo. He was an ordained and practicing minister, the husband of Nancy Ford, and the father of their two wonderful children, Richard Ford and Robin. At the time of his death, in 1996, he was an emeritus dean, a faculty member at CSWA Fresno, and was working on a number of projects and issues, including improving healthcare access at the Fresno area and working on helping CSU Bakersfield establish an MSW program. Richard Ford was a man of great vision and character. He treated everybody the same, that is, in a positive and caring manner. He made everyone and everything he touched good to great. Richard Ford was appointed Dean of the School of Social Work at CSU Fresno in 1972. It was a fairly new social work program, and it was in trouble and turmoil. Through his leadership, the program prospered and grew. It was the only MSW program in the Central California San Joaquin Valley region until the mid-1990s. Literally, all the MSWs and BSWs in San Joaquin Valley were educated under his watch up to 1995. Richard Ford had a tremendous impact on social work, education, and training and practice in the Central California region. He established a Central California partnership which now includes 11 counties, departments of social services, 3 university MSW programs, and the College of Health and Human Services at California State University of Fresno. This partnership still exists and is operational today. He was a mentor to many people, including me. I still have people come up to me today and they tell me about the impact he had on their lives. He had a great impact on the Central California region, the Fresno community, social work education and practice, and on CSUS Fresno during his 24 years there as dean. He was an active and strong advocate for diversity and the disadvantaged. As has already been stated, Richard E. Ford had a tremendous impact on social work education, training, and practice. He is missed and has left a legacy of accomplishments that will be hard to match. His life, his work, his impact was truly distinctive. And the award and really matches what he did and who he was. And I will now ask Richard Ford, his son, to come up and receive the plaque and also to say a few words. And, Mrs. Nancy Ford.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to tell you how my husband, thank you, got into social work. I asked my son, he was going to make the comments if he knew how his father actually got into the field of social work, and he said he had heard the story, but he wasn't sure. So I'll share it with you. When I met Richard, he was in seminary, and when we married, he was in his last year at the seminary, Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I fully expected to be the wife of a minister my whole life. After he graduated from seminary, he went to an internship in the Bronx in New York. And it was at a church in the inner city, and the minister was very much involved in social issues in helping the community. It was right in the middle of the Bronx, so they had every problem you can imagine that one has in the inner city. And groups would come there to meet, Alcoholics Anonymous, people with drug problems, single mothers, all of this. So my husband's interest in that area was kindled at that time. After he did his internship, we moved to Buffalo, New York, and he was Director of Christian Education and Community Outreach at a settlement house in the inner city, the east side of Buffalo. And because he was a minister, the people in the neighborhood would come hoping that he would be able to help them with problems. But the problems that they had were problems that really a social worker would deal with. Rent control, abusive spouses, single mothers, drug addiction, all these kinds of things. So at that point, he decided he needed to get a degree in social work. And so he went to the University of Buffalo, and that's where he received his master's. He became very heavily involved in all aspects of the community there. And during the time he was at Westminster House, that was the settlement house there, they decided to try to hire Saul Alinsky, some of you probably know the name, in the Industrial Areas Foundation through Chicago. So I hear some comments, so I guess you know who he is. His feeling was that there are two kinds of power, money, of course, but large groups of people. And so poor people obviously don't have money, but there are lots of poor people, and if they could get organized, they would be able to affect their lives. And so they were able to raise enough money through the help of many churches and community groups to bring the Industrial Areas Foundation to Buffalo. He was the president of the founding group and then president of the first organization once it was once it was established. From there, he was asked to join the faculty of the University of Buffalo, and he did after having been in the settlement house so many years. And from that, he was asked to move to Fresno to accept the position of dean of the School of Social Work. So a lot of his background was not in California, but he brought all of that with him when he moved here. and you've already heard from Ben some of the things that he did while he was there. So I'll let my son say a few words also.
My mother said that she didn't know what she'd say if she were asked to say a few words, but actually, as it turned out, she did. I'll just say this. It was great, better than what I could have done. That's the point. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. I know my father would have loved to see this, and his work included both the conviction and the moral sentiment and values that came from his ministry, but also, and the thing that always impressed me about him when we discussed political issues, as we often did arguing around the table, was the lack of judgment. He recognized all the time that people were human and they had their failings and their shortcomings, and they needed our compassion and our help. And for the most part, that sense of compassion and understanding also extended to his children. Although, but much to my benefit. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
My name is Al Murdoch, former colleague of John Wax's. I'm going to be presenting John's award. John's family was unable to come, so I'm going to present the award after I finish my little talk here to other colleagues who have come tonight and who worked with John for many years. John was a very talented social work educator, theoretician, staff trainer at the Veterans Administration Medical Center in Palo Alto. He was there for many years, and on the face of it, you wouldn't think that someone who worked in the same agency for 50 years or 40 years approximately, that might be a kind of a limited career, but not with John. John was able to mobilize that department, which was kind of in the doldrums when he came there, into a national force through his personality, his writings, his supervision, his innovative concepts. He just brought that department to national attention and proved to be quite an influential force in social work nationwide. As you may know, the Veterans Administration is the largest single employer of social work in the country. So the impact of his work was felt nationwide, even though he just stayed with one agency for his career, mostly with one agency for his career. So very briefly, I'll mention that John was chief there from 1957 to 1997 when he retired. He passed away in 2000, but his legacy is still felt, and I'll go over that very briefly. In addition to his administrative duties, John wrote widely for social work publications on both direct practice and administrative issues, did a lot of consulting. He supervised leadership trainees from all over the country as part of his leadership training program. That was one of his big emphasis in social work, was leadership training. He wanted all staff to be leaders in some sense, even though they were direct practitioners. His particular focus was on assisting social workers to develop their power to implant and realize social work values in the healthcare system. Part of that focus was on developing ethics in many of his practitioners, most of his practitioners, all of his practitioners. And he did that through establishing ethics committees as part of helping set up ethics committees throughout hospital-wide system of the VA. He also really worked hard on professional improvement of all staff and also social work staff throughout the VA system. Until his death, he continued to write professionally while also consulting with various social work and other healthcare staff in an effort to continue improvements both in the healthcare field and the larger society. So I'm going to ask the other colleagues who are here tonight to come up and receive John's award, and I think as a pioneer, John was one of the best in terms of the VA and nationally in terms of social work. So do I just, I'll get the plaque? Okay, thank you. we want to thank the committee for this award and on John's behalf and behalf of his family. And this is Doug Frazier, Mike Lydon, and Patty Boyle, also colleagues of John's, and they'll be accepting the award in his behalf. Thank you very much. Oh, thanks.
Hi, good evening. Where are my reading glasses? Good evening. My name is Nancy Lim Yee, and I'm a member of the Asian Pacific Islanders Social Work Council of the California chapter of NASW. I'm so glad to see all of you here, and I'm so honored to be able to be here to witness Diana Ming Chan's induction into the Hall of Distinction. I also wanted to thank Dr. Jim Kelly of Cal State East Bay because he's allowing me this opportunity, he's back there, he's allowing me this opportunity to present the award to Diana. It was actually Dr. Kelly who initiated the nomination of Diana. So, I want to just say a few words about Diana. I can think of no one more deserving of this special recognition. And because they told me I only have 3 minutes, I'm going to highlight just a few of the many, many significant contributions that she has made to the field of social work. She is truly a pioneer in this field. She's throughout her 46 years as a social worker and community leader, Diana has been an innovator and a risk taker who has repeatedly made contributions of long-lasting impact in various communities. In 1964, Diana was employed by the Cameron House as a family therapist. Since there were no other social workers or no other social work agencies existing in Chinatown at that time, she and one other social worker provided social services to a broad multi-generational clientele with a wide range of problems and needs. Of the 2 social workers, Diana was the one who was of Chinese ancestry, and she used her Chinese bilingual skills in applying social work principles in a culturally relevant way to serve Asian clients. She was a true pioneer in the social work field. And during the War on Poverty in President Lyndon B. Johnson's administration, thank you, Diana worked with a multidisciplinary team of individuals who successfully secured for the Chinatown North Beach districts of San Francisco a designation as a target community. As a result, the team subsequently obtained funds to establish a broad range of agencies that did not exist in Chinatown North Beach communities. These agencies included Self-Help for the Elderly, Chinese Newcomer Service Center, Chinatown Child Development Center, Northeast Mental Health Services, and Kaiming Head Start. Today, these agencies remain a very vital and integral part of the community, providing a continuum of services to children, youth, families, and seniors. I'm going to skip over some. In 1970, with the advent of bilingual education, Diana conducted workshops for teachers of the San Francisco Unified School District to help enhance their knowledge and understanding of Chinese American culture. Beginning in early 1980, under the auspices of the Parent Education Department of the San Francisco Community College District, Diana initiated and taught parent education seminars in a linguistically and culturally relevant way throughout the San Francisco Unified School District. The classes were often taught bilingually in both Chinese and English. This made it possible for monolingual Chinese-speaking parents to learn more about parenting and appropriate child-rearing methods in the United States. The systematic reduction in the number of social workers in the San Francisco Unified School District during the late 70s through the 1980s and 1990s created a huge backlog of cases which could not be served in private agencies and public mental health centers. With help from the Jewish Family and Children's Services, Diana obtained funding to set up a school partnership program in the early part of 1989. This project was an effort at researching the hypothesis that children with problems could be greatly helped if their teachers received regular classroom consultation from social workers. Diana provided mental health consultation to the staff at 3 schools and eventually proved that this hypothesis was correct. Even after her retirement, Diana continued to volunteer her time in the community. In 2000, Diana, her husband Clarence, and her son Harrison Leong contributed over $500,000 to NASW to fund the Learning Springboard project that promotes school social work in the San Francisco schools. I'm really happy to report that this has been going on for the last 2 years. 2 years, right, Diana? And there are many, many more social workers in the schools because of Diana's work and advocacy on this issue. And during the last 11 years, Diana has been particularly instrumental in building a solid base for the Asian American, Asian Pacific Islanders Social Work Council of the California chapter of NASW. She has played a pivotal role in hosting and facilitating numerous council meetings and events. Diana has been a vital bridge and inspiration for the next generation of social workers and students involved in the council. And she has been a mentor. She has been a mentor and a really good friend. And I'm really pleased to present Diana Ming Chan.
If you do that, it won't get recorded.
Oh, okay. Can you see me? I usually like to stand closer to the listeners so that we can be in contact, but I'm stuck because of this recorder, so does this help? I'm on my toes. Nancy, when you recount all that I've done, I realize that you just do it because the needs are there. And I think my education and my experience imbued me with such a passion that I must do it. And that's very Chinese too. When we're complimented and thanked for something that we do that's nice, we say, "Oh, I must. It's something I must do. Please don't say thank you." And that's how I feel about all the things that I have done in our profession. I love our profession. I believe that it does wonderful things, and because I believe that it's a profession that truly addresses individuals and systems and helps them through the crises and the problems that they have, and then rejoice with them when things are better. I think during an interview today with Dr. Gillies, I recalled that when I was a student with Gisela Kanapka and Ruby Purnell, we were studying, our basic book was Gladys Ryland and Wilson's book on social group work. And one of the things that I learned was that we learn the skills, And after we've practiced them for a while, those skills and those values and beliefs become part of our bones and our blood, and they're in our muscles. And that becomes our very being. So when I'm asked to talk about myself, I'm tongue-tied. But when I'm asked to talk about advocating for somebody else, then I'm a tigress. And now I'm advocating for the social work profession. That's why I'm fired up.
Thank you, Diane. My name is Jan Lee Wong, the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers California Chapter. Welcome to our annual meeting of the profession. It's our distinct pleasure to be a host to the Social Work Hall of Distinction. And I want to also salute Jim Carls for his tremendous pioneering work in this program. Thank you, Jim. I have 3 minutes. It's my distinct pleasure to let you all know about Lillian Hyatt. She's a tremendous person. I met her a few years ago when I was substituting as the editor for our California chapter newspaper, which has a circulation of over 12,000 social workers in California. And Lillian called me up and she had something to say. And if you know Lillian, you can't resist that. When she has something to say, she's got to say it. And when I heard what she had to say, I said, we have to let the social work community in California hear this story. It is so powerful and it's so impressive. She's a really wonderful example of someone who started her social work career kind of late in her life, at age 57 at my alma mater, San Francisco State University. She later taught there as an adjunct professor, and she started all kinds of programs in the area of drug and alcohol abuse and acted as the program's first director. She also received her MSW from San Francisco State. She retired, however, she founded the Coalition for Interfaith Understanding and served on the San Francisco State President's 2002 Task Force on Inter-Campus Relations and researched a book on the religious underground in the former Soviet Union. Her career as a social worker took a new turn when she entered a continuing care retirement community, and the initials for that are CCRC. And for some of you who don't know what that is, basically you start with fairly independent living, and you might have an apartment, and then the facility has graduated levels of care as you get older, and you might need a little bit more assistance. It's a good concept, but Lillian was there to make sure that the concept lived up to what was actually being practiced. And so she became an advocate for herself and other residents concerning unfair practices. She joined and became active in the statewide association of CCRC residents and started an independent organization of residents in the CCRC where she lives. She continues to write her column for the California chapter newspaper, and any of you who've read it, you've got to see that this is an example of what we believe in social work, which is that the people we help become empowered, and through their empowerment, conditions change, and therefore social change is achieved, and she's an embodiment of that. She's been recognized by the American Association of Retired Persons as a policy consultant for CCRCs, and she continues to make a lot of trouble for people, which is what social workers love. She's testified before the state legislature recently, And believe me, if there's anyone that can make an impact on our state legislators, it's Lillian. Because when a person like her comes up and says, I live this day to day, and these are the problems, they listened. And she was instrumental in getting important legislation passed in our state legislature. Also, I want to say one more thing, because I know my time's up here, but anytime you have an industry group representing the CCRCs come back and say, you've got to shut this woman up. She has done an incredible job as an advocate for people. Lillian, please come on up.
Yes.
You need to come up here. Come up here.
Thank you.
The mic is right here, so.
You know, I come up here as a very humbled woman compared to the other people that were introduced to you. I am a Johnny-come-lately, believe me. And I really went to that community to retire, I swear. I was going to write a book called Women Marking Time, which really explained that women today are living under very ancient laws, but they just don't know it. The research materials piled up in my little office, which used to be a bathroom. And I've been waiting 14 years to write that book. And the one that pushed it aside was, who will take care of me when I am old, and how will they do it? And it's now in the hands of the NASW Press, and I am hoping to see the end of that one because I really want to write Women Marking Time. First of all, I really have to acknowledge the people who have been my editors, starting with Jan Lee. Terry Donnelly couldn't be here tonight. He's an MSW that works for CANNER, the California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. And if it weren't for Hank Lawson, where are you, Hank?
Right here. Right over here. Right
Oh, there you are. You come here too. And there's a man in this audience who is sitting modestly back there at the table. I'm the world's worst writer. I'm a damn good researcher. Marvin Bernstein is the man who makes my prose readable enough for Hank to get to work on it, and for Terry Donnelly. He's also my editor at The Advocate and should be with us tonight, but he is working with 320 lawyers to help the elderly. And as far as I'm concerned, that's more important. And Jan Lee came to take his place and do this, and he made me blush. The truth is, I am a Johnny-come-lately, and as the lady before me, Mrs. Chen, said, once you really have a passion and you believe in something, damn it, you must do it. And so I did. But there are so many people who have helped me come where there are a group of people from my CCRC sitting here tonight, and they are my support system because they were the people who said, you're right, we'll help. And they stuck their necks out. It's not easy to do when you're dependent upon people for your care. It's frightening. And most of the people of our age are inarticulate, frightened, and very vulnerable. And most places like ours do not have a social worker except on a very part-time basis. And I'm really up here today to ask old-timers, you old social workers, we need you. Young people really view us in a very different way than we want to be viewed. I'm an independent cuss. I'll tell you, I don't want anybody running my life. And social workers who work with older people can't do that. You can't case manage them. They've had successful careers, particularly in the kind of milieu I'm living in. They know which end is up. And yes, their bodies are crumbling. This old gal can't see and can hardly walk, but she sure as hell can talk and she can write. And we need the older social workers who have some understanding. Somebody before talked about compassion. That's what older people need. Yes, they may have money, but when you have lost your mate, a home that you were used to, and you were once captain of your ship, and suddenly these things fall away. And that is the difficult thing. What we need is help and encouragement and advocacy, God damn it, because most older people don't talk for themselves. They feel they'll go along to get along. And that doesn't work when you are up against a powerful organization like the Aging Services of California, used to be called CASA. And that's who would love to see me shut up. But when people put up most of their life savings to come into a place, they deserve what they bought. And that's all I'm asking for. Don't market what you can't provide. And that is my big beef with the industry. Don't sell illusions. Tell people the truth. If there are limitations, let them know what they are. Let them know that they may, at the end, be paying $13,000 a year for their care because the institution will give them care that's not acceptable to them. And so what I'm trying to say is, can you all come back to work? And let's persuade the CCRC industry, and it is an industry and there's big bucks involved. Let's persuade them that in every one of these places, we've got to have a social worker full-time who knows every resident and can help them when they need help and leave them alone when they don't. Thank you.
I now have the distinct honor of presenting another friend whom I have known for maybe 30 or more years, and sharing with you a brief summary of the material that appears in the induction entry for Marianne Pennekamp. The nomination of Dr. Pennekamp was lovingly prepared and submitted by fellow social worker Karen Cancino. Raise your hand, Karen. Who worked diligently to collect the kind of data from many of us in school social work particularly, and others, all to confirm what each of us knew independently: Marianne Pennekamp belongs in the Hall of Distinction. Her contributions to social work, and especially school social work, have spanned 50 years or more. She has been influential in moving it in her practice, in teaching, in supervising, in volunteering, in writings, from a profession that was focused at once on case work to one that now uses a holistic person and environment perspective, or some other names that are more current that I'm sure Marianne could tell us about. Marianne was born in Karlsruhe, Germany, and there's a whole history that could be told in just that phase of her life, but we're going to focus on those things that you have done here in California. She received all of her education at Berkeley, her bachelor's degree, her Master of Social Work degree, and her doctorate. After getting the doctorate, she remained at Berkeley for a while and worked as a lecturer there, teaching courses and the generalist method for practice, as well as in school social work. At the same time, she was working as a school practitioner in the Oakland Public Schools. Later, Marianne and her beloved Hank and their 2 children moved north to Humboldt County, where Marianne lives at this time. Nationally, Marianne has been influential because of her many articles and 2 books that she co-authored, one that focused on the practice of school social work, more or less, or certainly the PPS in general, and the other that focused on a generalist kind of practice that served children and family in school and community. Since retiring over 20 years ago, don't you love that word? Karen caught her breath on that one, and so did I. Marianne has served as a criminal justice and delinquency prevention commissioner up in Humboldt County, and has been instrumental in the development of a workshop for children of divorce that has become a county mandate. She served on the Child Death Review Committee, whose work resulted in publishing recommendations that address the documented preventable child deaths and resulted in reducing the high rate of child deaths in Humboldt County. Additionally, the children's mental health system grew from approximately $300,000 in 1985 to more than $6 million in 2005 due to Marianne's efforts to improve services for that population. Reflecting on her many experiences, these are her own words. Quote, "One thing inevitably led to another and merged into a multi-strand tapestry. I have derived and am still deriving much pleasure from my work, which has been interwoven with my private world, its learning, values, and activities." And I can certainly attest to that. That is an absolute fact. Her writings, her speeches, and her outspoken advocacy for effective practice have advanced the profession of social work and have resulted in her being a highly recognized authority throughout the state, the country, and internationally. There's absolutely no way that the tireless, ongoing involvement and influence of this retired woman can be summarized in so few words. We're talking about since retiring over 20 years, she has been as actively involved perhaps in her volunteer activities as she was when she was paid. She has been more available, in fact, than for the kinds of activities that advance both the profession and the practice of social work in all areas, particularly that focus on families and children. Never, ever retire, Marianne Pennekamp. Come forward. I think he was trying to get pictures.
I'm sorry.
Oh, please come on.
Get you in front of the mic here.
Another shorty. Everything that should be said has already been said. What Diana said about you just have to do it. What Mrs. Hyatt said about that's just what social work has to do. And you do it because it has to be done. For me, in addition, it's been the passion of my life, and I'm sure it has for them too. And the passion carries you. In a way, when I get complimented, I have to say, but wait a minute, I got a tremendous amount out of this. You're complimenting me on something that gave me the greatest amount of pleasure. So compliments is not what it's about. I want to first of all, I want to acknowledge that none of that work, and I mean none of it, could possibly be done without, number one, standing on the shoulders of others, the mentors one has along the way, and it gives me particular pleasure to acknowledge my second-year fieldwork supervisor at the University of California, Berkeley, 1951-52, Isabel Mather, who honors us by her presence, her son David, who is with her. I also want to acknowledge the support I had from my family, from my husband, who deeply believed in supporting the kind of work I did. As a complement to political action, that was a hard one at the beginning, but that it is a form of political action that complements the more typical, what we consider political action. My son Peter, who is here, flew in from Washington to make this event, and Ken Nakamura, who's way back there, Ken is an old friend from the Berkeley days. He's now the Master's of Social Work Director at Humboldt State University. It's a tapestry of interwoven relationships, and too many people to mention. But I do want to just finish my anecdote about Peter without embarrassing him. But when we finished that first book, Guidance in Collaboration in School Guidance, with Dr. Mary Alice Sarvis, and we had worked every Saturday at my house, Saturday morning, Wednesday evening at her house. Mary asked, Dr. Sarvis asked Peter, what did he want for having been such a good kid along? He was, at 10, 11, 12 years old. And we expected, like, a trip to Disneyland or something like that. And he said, the rough draft of the book. So you get the family atmosphere, right? And my daughter, who got her friends together, and they proofread the proofs. So she was involved in it too. I mean, it was a total family enterprise, and so was the doctorate. So I want to acknowledge that. Just again to say that no work that I've ever done, and I mean none, has ever been in isolation without other people very much involved in co-doing the work. It isn't doable by oneself. And conceptually, that kind of filtered out in the book we wrote, that I wrote with Dr. Edith Freeman, for which Francis Capel wrote the preface for the second edition. So you see all of this goes a long ways back. And the concept of joining. How do you position yourself in the work in such a way that instead of coming in either as the leader or the adversary or the one who's kind of trying to fix something that's gone wrong, one comes in from day one as what piece do you have, meaning parent, meaning teacher, meaning administrator, meaning bus driver, meaning custodian, whoever knows the child involved, including the kids themselves. What pieces do we have here around the table? And together, how can we put that together to change the outcomes for the better? And that kind of empowering, I consider that very empowering, that kind of empowering get-together almost invariably leads to what we coined as the useful next step. That's in the consciousness of the people who actually have to do the work together and support each other to arrive at the outcomes that we're hoping for. That, in a nutshell, is what the work is all about. Same thing applies to teaching. One doesn't teach students. One interacts with students so that they teach each other, and you become the facilitator of the learning. So it's very consistent, and once you're in that mode, it just comes naturally. It's in your bones, it's in your whole person, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And the community work, I should just say one more sentence about that. In a small community like Humboldt County, in the current fiscally fragmented way of delivering services, we were often talking about the same families, but served in a fragmented kind of way by people from different departments. There might have been a public health nurse there, there might have been a truant officer there might have been on and on, but each working in their own box. And that work becomes extremely expensive to both the practitioners and the families. And I want to acknowledge what we learned from what we call clients, which I think is an unfortunate term, but there isn't a good term. The folks who supposedly have the problem that those of us who are professional social workers are supposed to fix. Well, I've really learned that there's no such thing, and that in the end, it's the dialogues, plural, that take place around the table that end up in different outcomes and with different whole policies in place. And so I'm just sharing my joy, which continues to this day. And I can't quite believe I'm standing here, but I am, so I have to accept that. I'm honored by the other folks that were chosen for the same honor, because that validates, in a way that nothing else can, the value of this award to me. And I want to thank everybody very much.
Aren't they all wonderful?